Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
Our Town, the show about Rochester, learns about a sports-based program for youth, and we get some real talk about local real estate. We also hear about a local Meals on Wheels program and sit down with the coaches and players of the RCTC men's basketball team after a stellar year. All that and so much more coming up next on Our Town, the show about Rochester. Coming to you from 125 Live in Rochester, Minnesota, Our Town. We are joined today by Andre Crockett, Director of Sports Mentorship Academy, here to tell us more about his work with youth and young adults in the community. Welcome back to Our Town.
Thank you for having me.
Last time we caught up with you, you had just moved into the new gym at the old Gage East gym, and you had just opened up that space for the Sports Mentorship Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Sports Mentorship Academy is?
Well, Sports Mentorship Academy is an after-school program for a young African-American youth between the ages of 10 through 18 years old. We find as a safe place for them to go for academic and athletics.
Wonderful. Your work is primarily with boys and young men of color, and there are some very specific needs to that community. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important to center those needs?
Because the majority of the kids that I work with doesn't have a father in the home. And we know that fatherless households leads to incarceration and the various other issues that African American young men face, especially in our community, whereas that we have very few role models that look like them.
How does your program continue to support not only health and well-being, because you do the sports and you have that space for them, but also issues of social justice and racial justice in the community?
I think outside we don't look at sports in that aspect of social justice, but in our community where we at, there's a lot of kids who can't even afford to be able to be on basketball teams or sports teams. So there is equitable piece within our organization to make sure that those kids have the same opportunity that other kids have. Especially if you look in the high schools and stuff, majority of the kids that's black and brown are not playing because of that.
Because of the economic disparity
yes.
issue. So there's a cost to pay to be part of these teams. So when they come to the Sports Mentorship Academy, what kinds of opportunities are you offering them specifically? Yeah,
basically, give them the same opportunity that other kids have, besides just the academic part, but the athletic part. So they're able to compete once they get into into high school. So the kids does not have to pay to play sports at our organizations, and we also offer like basketball training, health and wellness stuff that whereas they probably wouldn't get anywhere else.
They compete as well, right?
Correct.
They have games.
Yeah. We travel, as far as Wisconsin and Minnesota. We provide transportation, for the kids. Majority of the kids come, they don't always have the tennis shoes, so we have to prepare tennis shoes buy tennis shoes for the kids, also to be able to participate.
What is your vision, you have this vision for the Sports Mentorship Academy. You have understood that the Sports Mentorship Academy is just as much as a good for the young men and boys that you work with as it is for the whole community. As you think about the future of it, what does that look like, the growth of the Sports Mentorship Academy?
Well, that's a difficult one right there. I think that we have changed over the years, especially now because we have a center location where it's at. I like the way it's going because we have a lot of other organizations now utilizing the place, whereas they didn't have a place to be at before, such as 10K basketball. Was traveling from the YMCA. Since the YMCA closed, they really never found a home. They was going in and out of various high schools. But now they also have a place here, and he works with kids similar to I work with. But then you have perfect practice, they also do training and stuff in our building. So we had various different things. We had parties and something whereas African Americans didn't have a place to occupy and do programming and stuff. Now they have a place in Sports Mentorship Academy.
And that's incredibly important to be able to have a physical space where people could come to, and there's not just the basketball training and the games and things like that, but also, as you said, gatherings and other opportunities to use that space as well in the community. how can community members, well, first, actually, how do youth get connected to your program, and then how can community members learn more about what you're doing generally and get involved?
Basically from word of mouth and referrals from like the school district, mental health agencies, probation officers, and then we just have walk-ins. It's basically, especially in the areas where we at now, it's probably like 5 different apartments that's low income. And that's one of the reasons why I moved from RCTC to there, because I wanted the kids to be able to have access, easy access,
And what
not have to
neighborhood
worry
is
about
that, remind us?
transportation. That's off of 37th Street,
Okay.
37th Street and 41st Street Northwest.
Okay. Well, and how can people stay connected to you?
Well, I guess they can stay connected to me by, I guess Facebook, we got website, or my phone number.
Wonderful. You're just going to give your phone number out, Coach
Oh,
Andre?
that's universal. That's universal. I think I said I had that thing for 3 decades. And I don't think I want to switch up now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for what you do in the community. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch one of these games soon.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot for coming. Be sure to stick around. We have much more coming your way on Our Town. We hear about the Meals on Wheels programs at Family Service, and we sit down with 2 local real estate agents who get real about the ins and outs of real estate. But up first, we catch up with RCTC after a remarkable year for their men's basketball team in this week's Our Culture segment.
This season's been a tale of 2 halves, our non-conference schedule. We were 5-8 at the end of our non-conference schedule. Got into conference, we've won 13 in a row now, so finished tied for the conference championship. People were saying, well, how are you 5-8? Well, there's 3 types of junior college basketball. There's Division I, which is full scholarship, Division II, which is partial scholarship, we're D3 non. So of those 8 losses we had non-conference, 6 of them were to scholarship schools. So we've played a really tough non-conference schedule, which helps us in the conference schedule and led us to that streak.
As a team, it's been up and down. Obviously, this last month and a half, it's been up and up because we're on a 13-game winning streak. But the first month and a half of the season was we'd win 3 games in a row, we'd lose 4 in a row. Win 1, lose 2. It was we'd get really high and then really low. Once we came back from Christmas break, we started, as a team, to pick up more and more.
I'm not surprised at all because of the caliber of guys we've got here, and our non-conference schedule was off the charts hard. Now we get back into teams at our level, and all of a sudden our conference play gets a little easier. We don't always rely on one person. Ball moves, ball dictates our shots. We're a good screening team, and from a culture standpoint, I think that's always been something we've preached as being really unselfish. I have a big-time philosophy, and a lot of kids don't fit into what we do. There's a lot of really good players out there that wouldn't play for us because of our philosophy. They would not buy into our culture and our chemistry. So the people that we bring in, they have to be about winning. If they're about themselves, it will not work here.
My favorite thing about this team is, I would say how connected we are on the court. Obviously, every team has struggles, but it seems within the last month and a half, we've been connected 99% of the time. As connected as you can be for only knowing some of these guys for 5 to 6 months.
And in my time here, we've been to the national tournament 9 times, so I think I have a pretty good understanding of how to prepare, what we need to do in this next week, that type of thing. That experience allows me to help these guys to prepare for their best. This team's, they have a focus and a direction. I think that'll allow them to get to where they need to go.
My favorite thing about Coach is 2 hours before the game, he's locked in. He always calls himself piano wire. He's tight, he's unstable is how some of us might consider it, but he's he's on edge and he's ready for any challenge that we have.
That's our leading scorer. Get him the ball.
Well, we have to continue to do what we've been doing. That's play great defense and share the ball and get some timely buckets. They're really nice guys. They're good human beings. They're good students. They're really good stewards of RCTC, their home communities, their families, but when they get together, they play for each other, and it's pretty powerful.
For more information about this story and other Our Town features, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter at KSMQ #OurTown, or ksmq.org/ourtown.
Hi, I'm Danielle Till with Our Town Spotlight, a segment talking about awesome happenings in Rochester, organizations, businesses, and amazing volunteer opportunities. I have two guests here from Family Service in Rochester. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you. So introduce yourself and your role, and we'll just dive into some volunteer opportunities.
Sure. My name is Amanda Kintzi. I am the Senior Independence Outreach Specialist at Family Service Rochester.
Awesome.
And I'm Jennell Loeffler, and I am the Volunteer Services Manager.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about the volunteer opportunities. We know there's an immense need in the community with our senior individuals as well as other individuals in the community and families. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Family Service Rochester has a number of different volunteering opportunities that assist seniors and adults with disabilities through chore services, transportation to and from appointments, as well as Meals on Wheels here in town.
And I know that there are things like mowing the lawn and the Meals on Wheels. There was an event with raising funds with the Denim and Diamonds that I was a part of. Really, really awesome effort because we do need funds to support this. In what ways do you see the impact of the volunteers helping individuals in the community?
I would say that one great thing that I see is that we're able to help people to continue to live safely and independently in their homes and also to retain their dignity.
And the dignity is an important aspect of it, as well as engagement, right? Because it can feel isolating, it can feel lonely. In what ways is it important that engagement be a component of this with the volunteers?
Yeah, so I would say that senior isolation, it can be a huge thing that older adults are impacted by. And say Meals on Wheels, our Meals on Wheels volunteers might be the only person that senior sees that day. So just that small interaction can really brighten their day and also let them know that there's someone there for them and someone's checking in on them.
Now, I volunteered with the Meals on Wheels. It's super fun. I would encourage anybody to do that. You get to see the individuals in person, and the food's pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
it is. Can you give us some examples real quick of what the food entails?
So I would say I've heard that there have been some rave reviews like lately. There's like chicken parmesan. One consumer said that it was like the best chicken Alfredo that she's ever had. So we've had some pretty good reviews lately.
I mean, that's kind of a good thing to have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where can folks find out more information to volunteer?
They can go onto our website at familyservicerochester.org and click on the volunteer button in the upper right corner.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Danielle Till with Our Town Spotlight.
Hello again, this is Michael Wojcik with your Our Town Legislative Rundown. Sometimes there are issues that are so challenging that groups come together that don't normally work together to try and create solutions. Right now, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, realtors, and home builders are working with social justice groups like Isaiah, the Sierra Club, Minnesota Housing Partnership, Habitat for Humanity, groups like Neighbors for More Neighbors, all on the issue of affordable housing. And there is no place in Minnesota where affordable housing is more challenging than here in Rochester and surrounding areas. Up to 55% of folks who rent in this region can't afford the level of rent that they're paying based on their incomes. This is far and away the worst in Minnesota. So what can we do about it? Well, there's a number of proposals. Some would allow a single access or single staircase to multifamily buildings. The People Over Parking Act would eliminate parking minimums. A lot of times we're forcing expensive parking into buildings where the residents can't even afford to own an automobile. And there's a whole host of solutions that would allow for what's called missing middle housing. Think of it as small apartment buildings, small condo buildings to be built more easily. Now, groups opposing this tend to be groups like the League of Minnesota Cities and the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, and they oppose it on the grounds that it's a loss of local control, which it certainly is. But to quote current GOP Senator and Waconia Mayor Jim Nash, he says he supports local control, but not local out of control. And that's what a lot of folks are coming to conclude, is that the restrictions are so great right now that we really do need significant action. So we don't know what bills are going to come out of this session, but with a coalition like we've never seen before, there really is a chance to make progress on affordable housing this session. This has been Michael Wojcik with your Our Town Legislative Rundown.
Welcome to Our Town Walkabout. I'm Pam Hugdahl, the director of Rochester Art Center, and we're here at Open Studio. We just started opening the studio up on Fridays and Saturdays from 11 to 2 to allow families and people of all ages to just come in and try some different things. Quite a variety, so we always have a painting station, usually tempera, but we also have acrylic paints. We have one artist that likes to come back every week and work on a specific acrylic painting project that they're bringing in. Also some beading, collage. Today we have watercolor, tempera, Play-Doh, and coloring activities with coloring sheets. Sometimes we have model making, so with like air dry clay, knitting, weaving projects. That's been a popular one. I think the main thing is that we're offering an opportunity for people to creatively engage with the materials that they're seeing in the galleries. So when they're going through the galleries, they might have a disconnect with how something is created, and when they come up here, it's like, okay, this is feeling really positive, this is feeling really good, and I'm feeling creative, and I'm doing something that can lead to something that's down in the gallery. Sometimes kind of quiet on Fridays. People are at work, kids are at school, although we do see some traffic from distance learners and homeschool students. Saturdays are definitely busier, and we get a lot of traction when we have free family days on Sunday. Doing something physical, doing something artistic, creative is good for the brain, good for the psyche, good for your emotion. Rochester Art Center's website is rochesterartcenter.org. We have all of our programs and exhibitions listed there.
Our next guests, Nela and Philip Thomas, are here to give us some real talk about local real estate. Welcome to Our Town.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
So you both are real estate agents, and you also have a very popular podcast, video cast, called Real Talk. Can you tell us a little bit about how that got started?
I think it was just us brainstorming. We were just in the hallway one day and said, you know what, let's actually utilize the media rooms. The broker that we work for realized that real estate is taking a transition to social media. Mm-hmm. So they really implemented that. They want us to do more video. And that was kind of like right up Tim's alleyway. For me, I know real estate, and we kind of meshed together very well. So
that's great.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it went down. And you know what, we're fortunate enough where we are able to do things like that. And in the world we live in now, social media is huge, so it's been a blessing.
Well, I'll be very real. I don't know the first thing about real estate. I find it to be very confusing and overwhelming. And it is actually a little bit confusing. You both work in the space, you're passionate about it, it's your profession, your career. Why is something like this podcast so important, especially when it comes to just gaining accessibility and even myth busting about real estate?
Well, with us, and we appreciate your honesty, because that's one thing why we started doing this, because you have to really explain real estate in layman's terms, right? I mean, like, it's the infamous, as if you're talking to a third grader, not trying to be disrespectful about it, but we wanted to take an approach where it's like, hey, we're educating people in regards to not only the market, but real estate and just what things are happening, but we're also showing them a different side where it's like, you don't have to be a certain type of way when it comes to educating people about real estate.
And it's transparency. I mean, the more you're transparent with people, the more confident they are about doing it. So for us, we realized that there's not a lot of folks in Rochester that are doing or pushing social media for real estate. So that's why we took on the task. And we're very confident behind doing it. So
yeah. I love what you just said there. I think there does seem to be kind of like an empowerment piece around giving people like the tools and the information. Can you talk a little bit about maybe just some quick tips you have in terms of empowering people that are either thinking about residential home ownership, commercial real estate, things like that? What are some things to kind of help empower people going through the real estate process?
Well, it's exactly what we're doing right now, creating the content for them to do research. I was just thinking about this. Nobody really goes to encyclopedias or dictionaries anymore. Mm-mm. Most of the research is done online. So the more that I put content about what we do and how we do it, and doing it in the right way, that should make a person who's, their first time looking for a home or looking to sell, it should make it easier for them because they feel more confident doing the research.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So,
and you always want to work with people that you know and trust. And so our approach is, we are ourselves all the time, and then we allow people to feel comfortable around us. So then like you had said right now, it's like, Tim, Phil, I know nothing about real estate. Nicole, totally fine. Here's what is important, here's what's not important, right. And really just spend enough time and break things down for you. Excellent. Not enough people do that.
Definitely not. Rochester, I feel like Rochester is talking a lot about more about real estate in the last few years. The market has changed quite a bit. As folks that are kind of at the center of all of that, what are some trends that you're seeing in the Rochester real estate market?
Well, as far as Rochester goes, our trend is Mayo. So, we have a bubble within a bubble. So as long as Mayo continues to grow like it is, our market is going to continue to grow. So,
and the hardest thing with Rochester is because of Mayo, it puts us in a position now where we're encountering people from different places, right? Yeah. And so it's like you have your typical buyers in the southeast Minnesota area that you're accustomed to, but then now when you're working, I know you're from the New York area, and a lot of people are coming from like the south or the west coast. They don't understand how the market is. They don't understand. They're not Minnesota type people. And so like with people like us, when you put that content out there and people get to know you, you know exactly what they're looking for, and it makes it that much easier for the transaction.
Okay. I also feel like it's about building relationships, obviously, right? So like people are building a relationship with their real estate agent, with you all in the podcast world, I guess.
Right, and they are, and they don't even know who we are yet. Yeah, 100%.
So much of your message and the content produced is very welcoming and inclusive, but we also know that there are actually a lot of disparities in the housing market and home ownership here in the state, in the city, across the country. Why is it important to have diversity and representation in the real estate industry?
It comes down to just being comfortable. Because I'm a first-time home buyer as of almost 3 years ago, and growing up, I never even thought about purchasing a home. And then now, the people that I communicate and talk with, a lot of them are in positions that I was in, and so when you can relate with them and really just break it down and say, hey, you know what, the process does sound scary, but it's really not that scary, and you're coming from a place where you're not speaking to them where you're going, I'm up here, you're down here. I'm really talking to people eye to eye, and people appreciate that.
100%. So Rochester is a very big melting pot too. There's so many different cultures and diversities here. At the end of the day, I think that people will gravitate towards people that they feel, and I guess I don't want to make it sound, you're going to start to talk more with people that you feel that they understand where you're coming from or your background or how you're raised. So for us, I feel like it's a way for us to show like there are people out there that look like us that are at that level.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it's easier to work with someone that looks like you.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing though too. And a lot of times when like it's relatable, right? And then it's just and there's nothing wrong with that, because the thing is, but there's not enough people out there that look like.
That's the issue that we have.
It is an issue. Yeah, it is an actual issue, right? It isn't a barrier to access that you're kind of helping to bridge a gap there, for sure. Thank you for that. We don't often have real estate agents on the show. And I also, again, I think there is kind of this sort of mystifying sense of like what the real estate process is like, what real estate agents can kind of help you do. What is, I guess, one or two things that you wish everybody knew about real estate agents?
That it's not an easy job. And the job doesn't just start with us saying that we're real estate agents. Like, there is task upon task from start to finish. Like, we have to be multitasking from even after you help somebody buy a house, there's still a job to be done. So it's not as easy as just putting a contract in front of somebody. There's so many different steps that go into building relationships and also helping them from point A to point Z, but also helping their family members or just breaking down what's going to happen years down the line. There's so much that goes into it than just thinking that a real estate agent is a guy who wears a suit or a gal who wears a suit and they sign a piece of paper and they get paid a commission. It's bigger than that.
Definitely. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. I will continue to stay connected to Real Talk, and thank you for all you do.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned as much as I did about all that's going on in our city and the people making it happen. For more wonderful content produced right here in Rochester, please be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at #OurTown. I'm Nicole Fenoy-Amhara, host of Our Town, the show about Rochester. We'll see you next week.
Funding for this program is provided in part by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.